Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Barry Weber. I'm the police chief here in Wauwatosa. I want to tell you about an incident that occurred last night about 9:17 p.m. 911 call was received from a resident who resides at 8533 Glencoe Circle in our city. The caller reported his tenant was acting unruly, was intoxicated, and was being violent. 2 officers were dispatched, and shortly after their arrival, a male subject exited the house with a sword in his hand. Despite numerous commands for the subject to put down his weapon, the subject refused to do so, and the officers ultimately discharged their service handguns, striking the subject. Officers on scene immediately began performing life-saving measures and CPR until the paramedics arrived. Unfortunately, these efforts were unsuccessful, and the subject succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. The decedent is a 29-year-old resident of the city of Wauwatosa. The officers that are involved are, one of them is 34 years old with 6 years of law enforcement experience assigned to patrol. The other is a 25-year-old officer with nearly 3 years of law enforcement experience, also assigned to the patrol division. As per the Wauwatosa Police Department policy, both officers have been placed on administrative leave, which is standard procedure in any officer-involved shooting. As per Wisconsin State Law Act 348 and our own department policy regarding officer-involved shootings, the Milwaukee Police Department was engaged to conduct the investigation. I believe our officers were confronted with a very dangerous situation, and although it is very early in the investigation, it appears that they acted with courage and conducted themselves properly. I'll try to take some questions from you, but please remember that this is an ongoing investigation and it's being conducted by Milwaukee Police Department at this time.
Chief Weber, can you inform us, since both officers are on administrative leave, did both officers fire or discharge their weapons?
I can't confirm that right now because we're still early in the investigation, so they're still gathering evidence and processing, so I can't say that right now.
And the nature of the weapon that the deceased person had, did he have one sword, several swords, and was he using them in a demanding?
I was not at the scene, but there was at least one sword that he had in his hand.
And what was the time frame from the officers communicating with this individual? Are we talking a matter of minutes, seconds, and did this person come out the house racing towards the officers, or was it more or less a standoff situation?
I don't have that information right now. I think it happened very quickly from the time they arrived, and but we'll know more probably in the subsequent follow-ups that we do.
Was there any communication besides drop the weapon? Any negotiations?
I don't believe there was much of that because it happened so quickly.
Can you confirm neighbors' reports that the victim was mentally ill?
I can't confirm that. Again, Milwaukee will do that follow-up, and they'll be able to probably get more information for you.
Do your officers receive training to deal with mentally ill suspects?
Our officers receive lots of training.
You talked about, you believe initially that your officers did what they had to do as they were faced with a serious situation. Can you give us a mindset? I know you probably had a chance to talk to the officers, or someone has. Talk about that true nature, how serious of a matter this is, and the split-second decisions officers have to make, whether they're faced with someone with a knife, a gun, or any type of weapon. Talk about that, sir.
Well, if officers they're trained, and if they believe that they are in fear of their life being threatened or great bodily harm of themselves or another person, that's when they're authorized to use deadly force. And I believe that certainly happened in this instance, and that's what they did.
This individual that was obviously ultimately shot and killed by your officers, how long has he lived at the home, and were you guys ever called to this home for this individual or anyone in recent weeks?
Yeah,
8533.
Right. I don't have that information in front of me. I don't know.
Were your officers aware that he may have been suffering from mental illness when they arrived on the scene, and did that have anything to do with how they treated the situation?
I don't know what exactly they were told by the dispatchers, or if we were aware of any of that at this point. We'll leave that also for the follow-up. So
would that have made a difference? I mean, do they have special tactics they use in those situations?
It depends on what the situation is they're confronted with. If a person is mentally ill but still comes at somebody with a weapon and is intending to use deadly force, the officers are still going to have to respond appropriately to defend themselves, and I believe that's what was done in this case.
The individual that called 911, the actual landlord, Craig Tutton, did he give officers any indication that this individual was in fact mentally ill, or was there any indication from the person who called 911 that informed the officers? What was the initial call?
Yeah, I don't know that. I haven't listened to the tape or anything.
What was the initial call for, Chief?
I believe it was because he was having a problem with his tenant.
Okay. And was this a domestic dispute or simply a landlord-tenant dispute?
Not sure. Not sure at this point.
Can you elaborate on the type of training your officers receive to deal with mental illness?
You know, right now, I'm not going to do that because there's plenty of room for that to talk about later on until we analyze what's going on with this situation and see exactly how it all shakes out. We can do that later on. If there's nothing else, I appreciate your attention to this matter, and Milwaukee Police Department now has the investigation, and they'll be following up on it to determine, exactly what happens next.
Last thing in that, is Milwaukee handle all Milwaukee County officer-involved shootings? Is that just how it's worked out? This is the DOJ?
I'm not sure if that's the protocols for every agency in Milwaukee County, but that's a protocol that we've worked out with them if we have an officer-involved shooting. So we're very grateful for Milwaukee's help.
Do you know if the suspect made a threatening gesture or he just did not drop the weapon?
I don't know. I'd be speculating if I said that because, until we talk to the officers and they make their statements, it's hard to say exactly what he did.
And Chief, one final question.
Yes, sir.
Did the individual ever attempt to harm himself in the officer's presence? Or was there ever any indication that he was one
I don't know. I really don't know that. I don't know.
And you might be able to say how many shots were fired? Multiple?
I've
One?
heard different conflicting stories, but I don't know what that was right now, so I don't want to speculate.
More than 2 shots?
I don't know.
Do you know where the individual was hit?
I have an idea of, but I'm not going to go into that information because, again, this has still happened in just a short
The
time
question that
ago.
comes to mind, was the individual shot in the front, or was he shot in the back? That was a valid question.
And I recall I saw some of the pictures, but if I speculate on that, because the medical examiner, once they do their reports, they might say it was different. What I might think is an entry wound might be an exit wound or whatever. I'm not qualified to do that.
Okay. But the preliminary investigation shows that potentially this person was coming towards the officers, which would lead you to believe that he was shot in the front, or was this individual potentially walking away from the officers when these shots were fired?
I don't believe he was walking away from the officers, or they wouldn't have shot.
That's what I need to clarify.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Listening in to the Wauwatosa Police Chief Barry Weber giving a press conference, a news conference, an update on what happened last night in Wauwatosa at about 9:15 when his police officer shot and killed a man. What we are learning now is that there was a 911 call initially that brought police to this home on Glencoe Circle near Blue Mound, and that the caller had said his tenant was drunk and violent. We do know both of those officers that fired shots are on administrative leave. One is 34 years old, the other 25, both of them with multiple years of experience on the Wauwatosa police force. The chief did say that they acted with courage and conducted themselves properly, but MPD is, of course, investigating this situation. We'll have much more for you coming up on this story later on today's TMJ4, but more Live at Noon coming up after this.